Hey guys, I'm Tier Simac with Black Rifle Coffee, and I'm doing some medical instruction for our friends at Montana Knife Company. My background, I'm a Special Forces medic and a fleet accredited instructor, which just means the government says I can train cops. We've talked about in previous videos the MARCH algorithm: massive hemorrhage, airway, respiratory, and circulation. We are now at the C phase in that algorithm. And in your individual first aid kit that you've purchased from Montana Knife Company, we have two items for that. We have a pack of compressed gauze and a compressed elastic bandage. What does that have to do with circulation? Circulation really just means anything head to toe that's bleeding, broken, not an immediate life threat, okay? And we have compressed gauze for that and a way to secure it, this elastic bandage. This could be as simple as something that needs a Band-Aid that actually falls under C. You don't need a demonstration on how to use a Band-Aid, so I'm going to show you two things in this demonstration video. One is how to wrap a wound with compressed gauze, and the other is how to apply a pressure dressing. Not every wound requires a pressure dressing. If it's just a gash, but too big for a Band-Aid, we can take our compressed gauze and just use it as a simple dressing. Not a pressure dressing, just a simple dressing. We take this, we unwrap it, and you can see Sadie's wound here. Clearly it says ouch, that's obviously a wound. And we're just gonna cover it. This is after we've already taken all the crud, pine needles, dirt, everything else out of it. And we're just wrapping it. We're just wrapping to cover it. This is to protect the wound until she gets to some place where it can be sutured up. Now we don't need to unwrap this whole thing. Now that I've covered the wound, all the edges of the wound and a little bit beyond, I can take the rest of this, guys. I can just put it right on top there and see if you just hold that in place for me. My next step is to secure that in place. And some people will do this with tape. I prefer to use an elastic bandage for this because I think it actually works better. You'll notice in your kit here, this elastic bandage, you can use this independently because it actually has a gauze pad on it. But I've gone with the harder wound here for purposes of the demonstration. So I'm going to put that gauze pad directly over the wound. Move your hand, there we go. And put your hand back. There we go. I'm securing the elastic bandage to itself. Now this is important. You'll notice, you can move your hand now. You'll notice that I've got gauze sticking out both ends of this elastic bandage. I want to make sure that that is completely covered by my elastic bandage. The reason for that is because when we start applying downward pressure, this is going to start working its way out. Additionally, we've got to walk out of the woods. We've got to get some place where you can actually get sutured up. I don't want this soaking up whatever wilderness juices are out there into that gauze and going into the wound. I want to keep that wound as clean as it was when I started dressing it. So for that reason, I'm going to start at the ends. And because this isn't a pressure dressing, we're just covering the wound, I'm not wrapping this extremely tight. Now I've got these clips on the end, which can be a little tricky. There's two ways you can do this. You can create a little space and simply slip that underneath, just like that. Or we can use the teeth securing the edges underneath the teeth just like that. The last step in this is to make sure that I'm not compressing too much. Let's see your hands real quick. So normally this color would mean that it's a little too tight for a non-pressure dressing because it's constricting venous return. That's why blood's trapping down there. But I'm comparing it to the non-injured hand, and apparently Sadie just has blue hands. It must be a Montana thing. Check pulse real quick, make sure I'm not cutting off blood flow, and we're good. Expert. All right, let's unwrap this real quick and go straight into how to make a pressure dressing. The pressure dressing is essentially the same thing we just did, but with some spice to it. We're just going to be a little more aggressive in our application and our pressure. Now, one thing that will often happen when you're using an elastic bandage, whether it's this type that's rolled flat or the type you buy at a pharmacy where it's rolled, is you'll lose your grip on it and it will go rolling away. Take the time to pick it up and just roll it back up. Dust the dirt off. It's not the end of the world. Happens to the best medics, except me. Okay, again, we have our ouch. And this is now a more serious wound. It's bleeding, but not bad enough to require a tourniquet and not bad enough to require wound packing. It's more superficial, but it is a pretty good wound. Very common with knives, gutting animals, things like that. Okay, so first thing I want to happen is I want to take my casualty and I want to get her involved, give her some control of the situation. I'm going to say, put your hand right there. Cover that up. All right, now I've taken my gauze. I've removed it from the package, and instead of making it nice and neat with clean edges and wrapping it, I'm going to start gathering it up in one hand because I want to create a ball. And if you watched the previous video where we created pressure dressing on a junctional bleed, it's essentially the same process. She's not dying here, but she is losing blood. So time's an issue, but it's not critical. Okay, take your hand away. I already know where the source of the bleed is because it's fairly superficial. I'm going to make sure this covers the ouch, and I'm going to have her put her hand back there again, cover that whole ball, and don't let it get away. Put pressure on that thing. My next step is to take my elastic bandage, and I'm going to put this whichever direction works best for me. All right, move your hand. I want to make sure on this guy that I cover all of that gauze. It's critical that I do that. And it's also critical in a pressure dressing that you're stretching that elastic bandage out a few inches at a time so that you maximize the pressure from the elastic bandage. So you can see how much I'm stretching and pulling right there. Do you feel the pressure? Yeah. Yeah. It's because I'm an awesome medic. All right, and from there, it's the same process as before. We're covering the edges, making sure that no white from that gauze is peeking out because it will work itself out if we leave it uncovered. So one edge there, one edge there, and then more pressure over the middle, more pressure over the middle, and I'm nearing the end. When I know I'm nearing the end, I'm going to create a little space. I'm going to slide my finger underneath that last wrap so that I can secure my edges. All right, same thing. Now this is not an arterial bleed, so I want to make sure that Sadie still has a pulse, that I didn't wrap this so tight that I'm stopping the arterial blood flow. She still has a pulse, good. And let's see her hands again, your weird Montana blue hands. Okay, now you can see that the hand that has a pressure dressing above it is more, it's a different color than this one. That's because this is a really good pressure dressing and it's occluding the venous return, everything below here. Leaving this on for a while, this is probably going to start getting uncomfortable. Is it uncomfortable yet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's because I'm an awesome medic. And that's your pressure dressing.